The dying light caught the dust in the air, turning every grain into a speck of gold. A lone figure stood at the edge of the canyon, breath heaving, pistol shaking in his hand. He never thought mercy could cost him so much, yet the footprints behind him proved betrayal walked in step with kindness. Wyoming Territory, 1876. The plains stretched endlessly under a wide cloud-scraped sky. Rolling hills of dry grass and sagebrush trembled in the wind. The sun carved the land into sharp relief, branding everything with a fierce brightness that stung the eyes and burned the skin. In this vast expanse, a single rider could appear as a dust speck on the horizon and vanish just as quickly. On a small ranch several miles south of the bustling trail town of Red Creek, John Mallory stood on his porch. He clutched a tin cup of coffee in one hand and gazed at the horizon. John was tall but carried himself with a slight stoop, as though a subtle weight pressed down on him day after day. Age had not yet robbed him of strength. He was only 35, but life had etched lines into his brow and flecks of gray into his sandy hair. He took in a slow breath, the aroma of roasted coffee beans battling the crisp smell of sage. There was no one to share the morning with him, except his horse and the ghosts in his memory. Ever since a typhus outbreak had taken his wife and infant daughter 2 years ago, John's life had been defined by a single, driving goal to rebuild. A new barn, a few extra head of cattle each year, a patch of farmland, anything to keep him moving forward and keep the ghosts at bay. He also lived with a potent, nagging fear that he would fail to protect what little he had left. That worry haunted him with each rustling in the wind, each uncertain day on the wild frontier. That morning, the tension in his shoulders promised trouble. The horses in the corral threw nervous glances at the path leading toward Red Creek. John could sense it too. An electric charge in the air, something about to break. He slipped his Colt .45 into a holster at his hip, a reflex by now. He was about to refill his coffee cup when movement caught his eye. An unfamiliar man stumbled up the trail, his steps dragging in the dust. Even from a distance, John saw blood on the stranger's faded shirt. Instinct warred with caution. Folks out here often had reason to be wary of strangers, but John couldn't deny the pang in his gut at the sight of a wounded man. The stranger nearly collapsed at the fence. John set down his tin cup and hurried off the porch. "Whoa there?" John called, voice calm as he approached. "You hurt?" The man looked up, sweat and grit caked in his beard. He was younger than John, maybe late 20s, with a haunted look in his pale eyes. A bullet wound marred his left side. Blood had stained his shirt and stuck to his skin, shining a dark crimson in the morning sun. "Name's Lucas Hale," he managed in a rasp. "Ran into some trouble. I could use a bit of help, if you got any mercy left to spare." Lucas's goal in that moment was as obvious as the midday sun to survive, but behind his trembling eyes flickered something more than mere desperation. He seemed afraid of more than just death, afraid of being found, or perhaps being found out. He had the air of a man running from a sin he couldn't outrun. Yet John saw pain and fear, recognized a fellow soul battered by life. He had no illusions about the dangers of the frontier. Still, mercy pulled him forward. "Come inside," John said. "I got some bandages. We'll fix you up." He helped Lucas into the small cabin. The walls were roughly hewn logs, the single room warmed by a fireplace in the corner. John laid Lucas on a spare cot, trying not to jostle his wound too much. The man hissed through gritted teeth. "You alone?" John asked. Lucas nodded, eyes slipping shut for a moment. "Left the rest of my group a few days back." "Just me now." John bit his lip. "Well, that's clear enough, I suppose." He turned, rummaging through a trunk for strips of linen, salve, and a whiskey bottle. He had no doctor's training, but he knew enough from patching up ranch injuries to do some good. "Stay still." Lucas clenched his jaw as John poured whiskey over the wound. Then he used a sharp needle, sterilized in the fireplace, to stitch the ragged tear. While he worked, John told himself he was simply doing the neighborly thing, helping a traveler in need like folks on the frontier were supposed to. But in truth, part of him whispered that mercy could be dangerous. He'd learned that life had a way of punishing good deeds. Yet, it was a risk he couldn't help but take. Bandaged and pale, Lucas sagged against the cot, and exhausted gratitude lit his eyes. "You saved me," he whispered. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," John replied. "I just gave you a bit of patchwork. You can thank me when you've got 2 good feet under you again." He offered a shadow of a grin. "But you're welcome." John forced himself to remain businesslike, but something in Lucas's vulnerability tugged at him. He recognized the same lonely desperation that had dogged him in the months after he lost his family. The look of a man who didn't have a safe place in this world. John busied himself boiling water for coffee, giving Lucas a chance to rest. By nightfall, Lucas was stable enough to sit up, though his bandage needed changing. A deep but relatively clean wound, John thought. He had half expected the bullet to be lodged in Lucas's side, but the slug had torn straight through. Lucky. Outside, the wind howled. Lantern light flickered against the cabin walls, the golden glow revealing fresh worry lines on John's face. Over a quiet meal of beans and salted pork, John allowed himself a small curiosity. "Where you headed, Lucas?" Lucas hesitated. "Anywhere but back. I'm just trying to find an honest day's work. Over in Red Creek, maybe. Heard there was a big rancher needing extra hands for a drive north. Could pay well enough. Maybe I could get a stake in land, finally. Maybe start over." He trailed off, eyes shadowed. "Life ain't been kind." John nodded, a twinge of understanding. "Well, if you're up for it, once you heal, I might need a ranch hand round here, too. Hard to keep up on my own. Could be we help each other." A strange tension flickered in Lucas's gaze. Then he looked away. "Appreciate the offer," he said quietly. "I might take you up on that." Though Lucas's face remained guarded, John recognized a spark of cautious hope. For his own part, he fought down the swirl of misgivings. He had no concrete reason to distrust Lucas, only a gut feeling that the road behind him was dark. But in the moment, John clung to an old-fashioned belief that mercy had a place on the frontier. They settled in for the night, unaware that their uneasy alliance would soon be tested, and that John's compassion would exact a cost higher than he could have ever imagined. John stepped outside to check the livestock and gather a final load of firewood before bed. The ranch lay in dim starlight. A whispering breeze sifted through the tall grasses. The night seemed quiet, yet something in the distance thrummed with a foreboding hush, like the land itself held its breath. Inside the cabin, Lucas lay awake. Every shift pulled at his stitches, but the pain came second to a swirl of mounting anxiety. He'd run far to evade the men hunting him. He'd told John only half-truths, that trouble found him, that he was alone and needed shelter. But if his pursuers were still on his trail, he feared John might become an unwitting casualty of that chase. For a time, Lucas watched the flicker of lantern shadows on the wall and tried to steady his breathing. He recalled the old rancher who'd once taken him in as a boy, until a crooked lawman accused the man of harboring fugitives. Ever since, Lucas had drifted, half hoping for a real home but never quite settling anywhere. Fear was his companion, fear of being pinned for crimes not entirely his, fear of trusting the wrong people, fear of losing the scraps of hope he guarded so jealously. He closed his eyes. Sleep finally dragged him into uneasy dreams. Next morning, John awoke early. It was a day for errands in Red Creek. His ranch was a half-day's ride from town, and he wanted to gather supplies. Lucas, though pale and in pain, insisted on coming along. He claimed he wanted to see if the local doctor might check the wound. John was reluctant. Lucas's bandage was fresh, but the dusty ride might aggravate the injury. Still, a voice inside told him it was important not to leave Lucas alone. If Lucas truly needed doctoring, better to do it soon. They set off under a sky brushed with morning light. The day blossomed hot, and their horses kicked up clouds of dust. Lucas winced with each jostle, but he kept his spine rigid with stubborn pride. John tried to keep conversation light, though small talk rarely came easy to him. Halfway to Red Creek, they spotted a wagon plodding ahead of them on the narrow road. The driver wore a battered hat, and in the back sat a figure wrapped in a threadbare coat. As they rode up, the driver glanced back and offered a curt nod. "Mornin'," he said. John nodded. "Mornin'. Headed to town, I take it." "Indeed." "Name's Harris. My wife and me were stopping at the Mercantile." He thumbed over his shoulder to the figure in the back, an older woman, face hidden by a scarf. "She's got ailments. Hopes the doc can help." Lucas tried to hide his discomfort, but Harris's gaze lingered on the bloody bandage visible under Lucas's coat. There was an awkward pause. "Bad injury?" Harris asked. Lucas's lips thinned. "Accident," he said shortly. "Took a stray bullet from some drunken fools last night." He was adept at half-lies, mixing enough truth to be believed. Harris shrugged. "Town's always rowdy on a Saturday. Good luck, friend." They parted ways. John exhaled slowly, a hint of tension creeping up his spine. He couldn't say exactly why that brief conversation set him on edge. Perhaps it was how quickly Lucas deflected questions, or perhaps it was the uneasy flicker in Harris's eyes as he studied Lucas's wound. By midday, they reached Red Creek, a rough frontier town built along a dusty main street. It boasted a saloon, a pair of boarding houses, a church, blacksmith, and a few shops. The smell of horse manure and stale whiskey mingled with the heat. John took Lucas to the doctor's small wooden office on the main road. While Lucas got examined, John purchased flour, sugar, nails, and lamp oil from the Mercantile. As he loaded supplies onto his horse, he noticed two men across the street, tall, broad-shouldered, and scanning the passers-by with hawk-like intensity. Gun belts hung low on their hips. Something about them whispered, "Bounty hunter." Their posture, the suspicious frowns. John shook it off and continued his business, but a cold prickle of worry crawled up his spine. He fetched Lucas an hour later. The doctor had offered more thorough bandages and a dose of laudanum for the pain. Lucas was pale, but he managed a tight-lipped smile. "Doc says I'll live?" John nodded. "Good." He eyed Lucas carefully. "Still up for heading back? We can stable the horses and stay overnight if you need rest." Lucas hesitated, as though torn. "I'd rather get back to your ranch," he finally said. "Town's too. I don't like it here." John understood. Red Creek had the kind of eyes that pried secrets out of strangers. "Then let's ride." They left in the sultry heat of the afternoon. A faint hope stirred in John that maybe, if Lucas stuck around to help with ranch chores, he could build a new sense of home for both of them. But that hope was fragile. He had no idea that come nightfall, their fragile alliance would face its first test. They were an hour from home, the sun setting in a wash of scarlet and gold across the sky. Dusk settled over the land like a quiet promise, or a threat. Sparse pines stood like sentinels against the horizon. John's ranch lay just beyond a low ridge. Lucas's posture stiffened. John noticed his gaze flitting back and forth. "Something the matter?" John asked, scanning the empty plains. Instead of answering, Lucas spurred his horse into a faster trot. Confused, John followed suit. After a few hundred yards, a shot rang out, echoing across the open land. John's horse whinnied in alarm. "Take cover!" Lucas shouted, yanking his reins to steer behind a cluster of rocks. John dove for the same cover, throwing himself off his horse. Another shot. This one pinged off a stone a foot from John's head. Heart hammering, he peered around the edge. 3 riders were tearing across the plains, guns smoking, hooves kicking up swirling dust. John cursed under his breath. Why were they shooting? Lucas's face twisted with grim understanding. "They found me," he muttered, voice shaking. "Why? I thought I'd outrun them." John's eyes flashed. Ooh, but Lucas only had time to grit his teeth. They scrambled behind the rocks as bullets ricocheted, each shot exploding in the dying light. John had an old single-shot rifle strapped to his saddle, but retrieving it would be suicide under such heavy fire. With only his Colt, he returned fire. He was a decent shot, but the range was far. Lucas hissed as he tried to straighten, his side wound threatening to reopen. Clutching his own revolver, he squeezed off 2 shots. One bullet found its mark. A distant figure toppled from the saddle, crashing into the dust. The other two riders flanked them, one from the left, the other circling wide. John realized with a cold rush of fear that they were pinned down, outnumbered, and outgunned. The swirling dust limited visibility, but their assailants were methodical, trying to box them in. In that frantic moment, John felt a brutal clarity. If he died here, it would be because he'd shown mercy to a stranger. He forced the thought aside. He wasn't dead yet. He squeezed off shots, covering Lucas while the younger man fumbled to reload. Gritty wind stung John's eyes as the fading sun made everything dance with flickering shadows. Just when John braced for another rush, a desperate scream cut the air. The man Lucas had shot was still alive, trying to mount his horse again. The horse spooked, rearing back. The other attackers halted in confusion, an instant's pause in the chaos. Now, John barked. He bolted from cover to grab his rifle from the saddle. A bullet whizzed by, but he reached it, yanked it free, and crouched behind the horse, loading a single round. A quick breath. One shot. The nearest rider jerked back and tumbled from his horse with a cry. The second man, seeing both of his companions down, wheeled around and galloped away in a swirl of dust. John's heart thundered. He kept the rifle leveled, half expecting the lone survivor to circle back. But all that remained was the fading orange sky, drifting dust, and two wounded men sprawled on the ground. Lucas stared, panting. The ambush was over almost as quickly as it had begun. The downed men moaned. John felt no immediate urge to aid them. They'd tried to kill him after all, but the memory of losing his wife and daughter chipped at that hardened shell. "Who are they?" John demanded, aiming a fierce stare at Lucas. "And why are they after you?" Lucas bowed his head, breath ragged. "Bounty hunters. Thought I'd outrun 'em after a job went wrong." He swallowed hard, eyes full of torment. "I was part of a posse that robbed a stage line. I didn't want to do it, but I got in deep over my head. My partner shot a guard dead. I ran off, tried to do the right thing, but the law pinned me as an accomplice. Now there's a price on my head." John felt fury and betrayal coil in his gut. All this time, he'd sheltered a criminal, or at least someone who'd stood on the wrong side of the law. And those men had nearly killed him for it. "You should have told me," he growled, eyes smoldering with anger. Lucas's voice trembled. "Would you have helped me if you knew?" John didn't answer. His chest heaved, conflicting instincts battling within. Finally, he turned to the wounded bounty hunters. One was unconscious, bleeding heavily from a shoulder wound. The other tried to sit up, eyes wide with pain. John recognized a moral line in the sand. He could leave them here to die, or he could help. Once again, the voice of mercy pounded in his chest. He looked at Lucas. "Get back on your horse. Let's bring them to my ranch. If they're still alive, I don't want their blood on my hands. I'll patch them up, then we'll see what we do from there." Lucas looked stricken. "You'd risk them recovering and telling the law about you? Us?" John's jaw tightened. "I don't kill wounded men." They wrestled the moaning bounty hunters onto their horses. The third, shot by Lucas, had died. John gave him a quick prayer and left his body for retrieval. With the sun a mere red rim on the horizon, they headed for the ranch. Lucas's eyes darted with apprehension. He understood too well how quickly mercy could turn against a man. But John's determination left no room for debate. They arrived at the ranch under a star-sprinkled sky. Both wounded men had lost a great deal of blood. John hoisted them onto bedrolls in the barn, setting up lanterns and fetching water. Lucas hovered, pressing a hand to his throbbing side. "What's your name?" John asked the still conscious bounty hunter. The man wheezed. "Jarvis." He spat, gripping his bleeding shoulder. "Don't think this means we're grateful. We got law on our side, and you're messing with the law if you help that thief." John pressed a rag to the wound. "Last I checked, vigilante bounty hunters ain't exactly the law. You want to stand trial in front of the circuit judge, be my guest. But for now, shut up and let me stop the bleeding." Jarvis grunted, passing out from pain. John's head pounded. He turned to Lucas, who was pale and trembling. "I need your help," he said gruffly. Stay awake. These men will die if we don't act." Lucas gave a hollow laugh. "After trying to kill us. And that difference is what separates us from them." John shot back. "Let's move." They worked through the night. When it was finally over, John's shirt was slick with sweat and blood. 2 men lay unconscious but stable on barn cots. Lucas, exhausted, sank against a bale of hay, clutching his own side. John felt an odd sense of moral triumph tempered by a bitter foreboding. He'd saved their lives, but in doing so, he'd invited a new storm upon himself. A hush settled over the ranch. The horses stomped restlessly in their stalls. Outside, a cold moon shone on the lonely plains, and in that silence, the seeds of betrayal took root. Lucas's side had improved enough for him to move more comfortably. Jarvis and his fellow bounty hunter, named Ryder, remained weak but conscious. John had done his best to keep things civil, feeding them, changing their bandages. But animosity simmered. Jarvis's suspicious eyes watched John's every move, as though searching for a weakness to exploit. Ryder, the quieter one, stared at Lucas with hatred. His partner lay in a grave thanks to that younger man. Some nights, John could feel the tension radiating like heat lightning before a storm. John decided it was time to confront the question, what next? He rose early and strode to the barn. The 2 bounty hunters were awake, glaring at him with hollow faces. Lucas lingered by the barn door. "I've done what I can for you," John said, voice firm. "You'll live, assuming no infection sets in. I want you off my ranch as soon as you're well enough to ride. But I need your word you won't bring the law back down on me for saving your hides." Jarvis coughed a laugh. "You're in deep already. The second we're on our feet, we'll come for him." He jerked his chin at Lucas. "There's a bounty. He's wanted for murder and robbery in 3 counties. Lucas's face flushed. "I never killed anyone. That was my partner. He set me up." Ryder spat in the dirt. "Tell that to the law. All they see is your face on a poster." John's gut twisted. "I said you'd leave soon. That means you can't have Lucas. You'll leave him be." Jarvis grinned, a predator's smile. "Hiding fugitives is a crime, rancher. If we ride into Red Creek and talk to the sheriff, you'll be the one answering for it." Anger flared in John. He'd acted from conscience, saved men who tried to kill him. Now they threatened to ruin him, but he swallowed the fury and turned to Lucas. "Get out. Go saddle their horses. I want them gone by dawn tomorrow." Lucas nodded, stepping outside. The tension was thick as John parted from the bounty hunters. But deep in the older man's heart, a more troubling question burned. Was he letting a criminal slip through justice's net? Or was he protecting a good man who'd been forced down the wrong path? He decided to let the day pass quietly. If tomorrow brought trouble, he'd face it then. Yet fate had different plans. Night came shrouding the ranch in darkness. A gentle wind rustled the grasses, and the lantern inside the barn burned low. John dozed in a chair by the fireplace, keeping one ear open for any disturbance. He didn't trust the bounty hunters not to pull some sly trick. Lucas, still sore, had turned in early, but something had kept him restless. Each time he closed his eyes, he felt the suffocating presence of the bounty hunters next door, ready to drag him back to a life on the run. Shortly after midnight, a soft scuffle pulled John from half-sleep. He rose, grabbed his Colt, and stepped quietly outside. The moonlight cast pale shapes across the yard. Movement in the barn caught his eye, a faint glow of lantern light. He crept closer and peered through a gap in the boards. Inside, he saw Lucas rummaging through a saddlebag, the one belonging to Jarvis. The 2 injured men lay asleep, or drugged. If Lucas had found the laudanum, John felt confusion swirl. Why was Lucas rifling through their belongings? Lucas withdrew a small, folded piece of paper. He quickly read it, his shoulders stiffening. Then he pulled out a wad of banknotes. John's stomach clenched. Was Lucas robbing them? He felt a sharp pang of betrayal. He started to push the door open, and froze when he saw Lucas's expression in the lantern light, a mix of fear, regret, and desperation. Lucas stuffed the money into his coat. He tucked the paper away. Taking a shaky breath, he turned to leave. As he stepped outside, he nearly ran into John. "God?" Lucas stifled a gasp. His eyes flickered in panic, then defiance. "John, you're awake." John's voice was cold. "You want to explain what you're doing?" Lucas clenched his jaw, refusing to meet John's gaze. "I need to leave tonight, and I need money to disappear. They owe me. The bounty they'd collect off me is more than this anyway." John felt anger coil in his gut. "That money's not yours. And what's on that paper?" Lucas shrugged, though guilt laced his eyes. "Records. They got details about the stage robbery. Evidence proving I wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. If I show this to the right man in Cheyenne, maybe I can clear my name. But I need funds to get there quietly." His breath hitched. "I'm sorry, but I can't stay here any longer. Jarvis will kill me if he gets the chance." John's heart pounded. A swirl of confusion, sympathy, and frustration battered him. "So you robbed them. I'm risking my neck for you, and you repay me by stealing. Would you rather I killed them after what they did?" Lucas's voice cracked. "I'm not the monster they think I am. But if I walk away broke, I'll never shake them off my tail. Trust me. I need this." John could see the torment behind Lucas's eyes. He thought of his own losses and how close he'd come to losing everything. The moral lines blurred. Did he let Lucas go? Turn him in? The weight of everything pressed on him. His conscience, his safety, the farm's future. In the pale moonlight, John sighed heavily. "You take your horse and go then. I won't stop you." He paused. "But don't come back." Lucas's lips parted. A flicker of gratitude mingled with deep sorrow. "Thank you," he swallowed, "for saving my life, for letting me try to prove my innocence." John nodded curtly. "Go before I change my mind." With that, Lucas slipped into the darkness, saddled his horse quietly, and rode off. The faint hoofbeats faded, leaving John in the quiet hush of his ranch. He stared at the moonlit horizon, a bitter ache settling in his chest. Mercy had led him here, to secrets, betrayal, and death. Now he could only hope letting Lucas leave would end the trouble. But come dawn, as soon as Jarvis discovered the stolen money and the missing paper, a new storm would rise. John was already at work in the barn when Jarvis woke with a start, rummaged through his saddlebag, and found it light. A roar of fury erupted. "He took it. That damned snake took my money, my papers. He's a dead man." John placed a hand on his revolver. "He's gone. You threaten me? You'll regret it." Jarvis seethed, face contorted in rage. "You helped him, didn't you? You helped that criminal escape?" The wounded man winced at his shoulder, but anger fueled him. "You realize what you've done, rancher. That paper proved he's guilty as sin. Now he's got it. I'll have your hide for this." John tensed. "Calm yourself. That paper may prove differently than you think." Ryder, struggling to stand, spat out a curse. "We'll ride into Red Creek, gather a posse, and burn this place to the ground if we have to." A swirl of dust at the edge of the yard interrupted them. A solitary rider approached at a gallop. John squinted against the morning glare. "Lucas." He reined his horse hard, sliding to a stop. He looked frantic, breathless. "I saw riders," Lucas gasped, leaning in the saddle. "Out on the North Ridge. They might be friends of Jarvis. Or worse, could be more bounty men." "They'll be here soon," Jarvis hissed. "You came back, you fool?" Lucas ignored him, turning to John. "If they find these men alive, if they see me here, this is going to turn into a slaughter. You need to get out, or we need to fortify." John's jaw dropped. The younger man had left under cover of darkness, stolen from the bounty hunters, yet had returned at risk to warn him. The riddle of loyalty and betrayal twisted John's gut. He had every reason to send Lucas away, but now the man was here, possibly saving his life. Without missing a beat, John took charge. "Get inside the barn, set up a defensive position. Lucas, help me close the gates. Jarvis, Ryder? Like it or not, you're stuck with us. Grab your guns if you're fit enough, or else get under cover." The two bounty hunters glared, but survival instincts kicked in. They hobbled toward a corner of the barn. John and Lucas dragged whatever they could. hay bales, crates, to create a makeshift barricade. The ranch yard was open, so the barn at least provided some cover. The morning sun blazed overhead, turning sweat to salt on their brows. Hoofbeats. A group of 4 riders, rifles glinting, crested the slope. They spread out in a line, approaching cautiously. John inhaled. Adrenaline raced through him, a grim acceptance that blood might spill again on his land. A voice called out from the lead rider. "We're looking for Jarvis and Ryder!" "We know you're here. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." Jarvis cursed under his breath. "That's Farnham," he muttered. Another bounty hunter came from the same outfit. "He's meaner than a rattlesnake." John shot him a glare. "And how many more are out there?" "Don't know. He usually travels with a few men." John had to make a decision. If they surrendered, Farnham might just kill everyone, including John, to claim the bounties. If they fought, they risked the ranch going up in flames. He glanced at Lucas. "You could ride out, slip away. It's me who'll face them." But Lucas set his jaw, a strange resolve in his gaze. "I'm done running. I came back because I can't let you pay for helping me." He swallowed. "Even if it costs me my life." John gave the slightest nod. "Then we stand together." The standoff began. Farnham and his men circled the barn. Jarvis mustered enough strength to shout, "We're not your prisoners, Farnham." But the rancher here's armed to the teeth. "He'll kill us if we leave." John pursed his lips, fury pulsing. Jarvis was trying to goad Farnham into storming the barn, painting John as the villain. Farnham wasn't fooled. "What do you want, rancher?" The lead rider called. "Let them out, and we'll be on our way." John hollered back, "Not so simple. These men tried to kill me. We can talk this out. But I need your word you won't burn my place or kill me for no cause." Farnham's laughter carried on the wind. "You're harboring a fugitive and meddling in bounty business. Hand Lucas Hale over. Then we'll see about terms." Lucas stiffened at John's side. "I'll go. Better that than getting you and your ranch shot up." He made to stand, but John gripped his arm. "Not like this," John whispered. A tense hush followed. Then Farnham's rifle roared, the shot slamming into the barn wall. Splinters flew. John ducked, heart hammering. The fight was on. Bullets whistled across the yard. Jarvis and Ryder scrambled behind bales, returning fire in short bursts. Lucas fired from a gap in the wall. John grabbed his old rifle. Breathing slow to steady his aim, he squeezed the trigger, and one of Farnham's men slid off his horse with a cry. The attackers pressed closer, using the coral fence for cover. Horses screamed. Dust swirled, stinging everyone's eyes. Farnham barked orders, flanking to the left. Another barrage of gunshots peppered the barn. John felt a hot sting in his shoulder. He'd been grazed. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain. Jarvis bellowed as a bullet tore into his thigh. He collapsed, dropping his gun. Ryder, seeing his partner fall, burst from cover to drag Jarvis behind some crates. "We gotta get out of here!" Ryder shouted. Between shots, John looked at Lucas. "We're pinned. If we can't push them back, we're finished." Lucas's eyes flickered with raw determination. "Cover me. I'll circle around behind them." Without waiting for an answer, he bolted out the back of the barn. John's stomach dropped. The man had tried running once, but now he risked his life for a chance to outflank Farnham. Bullets hammered the barn door. John crouched low, returning fire. Silence fell momentarily as Farnham reloaded. In that lull, John heard a commotion from behind Farnham's position. A pistol cracked, twice. Farnham cursed, spinning to face the threat behind him. John seized the moment. He rose, steadied his aim, and fired a single shot. Farnham jerked, head snapping back, and tumbled to the dirt, his rifle clattering away. The last of Farnham's men, seeing their leader fall, shouted in alarm and spurred their horses in retreat, disappearing over the ridge. John kept his rifle trained on the horizon, chest heaving. Slowly he realized they were alone. The yard was silent save for the rasp of pained breathing and the dull moans of the wounded. After a long moment, Lucas emerged from behind a stack of crates. His face was flushed, eyes searching for John. "We did it," he breathed. John nodded, relief and exhaustion tangling in his veins. He slumped against a broken rail, blood seeping from the graze on his shoulder. They'd survived. Resolution, the aftermath of the gunfight spread across the ranch yard. Farnham lay dead in the dust. One of his men lay a few yards away, motionless. Another had ridden off wounded. Jarvis and Ryder were battered, Jarvis sporting new injuries. They were too weak to put up further resistance. For a time no one spoke. The wind carried the smell of gun smoke and the metallic tang of blood. Finally John straightened. He turned to Lucas, voice low. "This can't go on. If the law hears about this massacre, they'll tear this place apart. I have to send for the sheriff myself and tell him the whole story. But you—" Lucas lifted his chin. "I'm leaving. If there's any chance I can clear my name in Cheyenne, I need to take it, and I can't drag you down with me." John felt an odd mixture of sadness and relief. He looked at Jarvis and Ryder, who still shot venomous glares. He had saved their lives more than once, but they were bounty hunters, men who thrived on violence. Now, battered and broken, they had little fight left. He doubted they'd cause trouble if they wanted to live. The ranch was the only place they could hope for medical care in the immediate days, and John, despite all the chaos, couldn't abandon them. Mercy still guided his hand, for better or worse. "The sheriff will ask questions," John said. "Tell me, Lucas, do you have enough evidence to prove you never shot anyone during that stage robbery?" Lucas patted his coat. "I have the stolen records from Jarvis's bag. Should prove the bullet that killed the guard didn't come from my gun. It's not airtight, but it's a chance." John gave a tight nod. "Get going then. I'll deal with the sheriff here, tell him Farnham attacked my ranch, that I fired in self-defense. Jarvis and Ryder can confirm or deny, but I suspect they're in no position to pick more fights." He glanced coldly at the bounty hunters. "You'll keep your mouths shut if you know what's good for you, or I'll show the sheriff those records that prove your boss was chasing bounties without warrants." Jarvis grimaced, nodding weakly. "Damn you," he muttered, but it was agreement enough. The morning sun climbed higher as Lucas gathered a horse, one of Farnham's. His own horse had taken a bullet to the flank and was limping badly. He saddled Farnham's sturdy bay, wincing at the pinch in his still healing side. John watched him in silence. Finally Lucas turned to the older man, the man who'd saved him and nearly died for him. "I owe you my life, John. I don't have words to set that straight. But maybe someday, if I manage to clear my name, I'll come back, and I'll pay every debt I owe." A tired, half-smile tugged at John's mouth. "Just don't get yourself killed," Lucas hailed. The words carried the weight of a fatherly warning. Lucas nodded, mounting. Then, in a wash of hooves and dust, he rode into the distance. John stood watching until the figure vanished over the horizon. He couldn't be sure if he'd ever see Lucas again, or if the man would find the redemption he sought. All he knew was that mercy, once again, had come at a high price, but maybe, just maybe, it had saved a soul from the gallows. The day wore on. John tended to the wounded men, determined to see them off his land as soon as they could ride. He prepared himself for the sheriff's visit. He would speak the truth as best he knew it, that Farnham and his men attacked, that he had no choice. As for the details about Lucas, John would choose his words carefully. He refused to be an accomplice to injustice. In the days and weeks that followed, the sun continued to rise over that quiet ranch in Wyoming territory. John fixed fences, buried the bodies, sent word to the sheriff, and nursed Jarvis and Ryder until they were well enough to depart. The lawman believed most of John's version of events, though he made note of a missing fugitive. Suspicion lingered, but no charges were pressed. The bounty hunters limped away, anger in their eyes but no fight left in their souls. John stood alone again on his porch with a tin cup of coffee. The land stretched out before him, indifferent to human struggles. That morning, though, the wind felt different, no longer humming with tension. Instead, it whispered a quiet new beginning. He thought of Lucas, riding toward Cheyenne with a stolen wad of money and a piece of paper that might clear his name. A twinge of worry flickered. The frontier was unforgiving, and the path to redemption was never certain. Still, John held on to a shred of hope. Perhaps this time, mercy would carry its own reward, even if it was only that two men, battered by life, found the strength to do the right thing in the end. Mercy often places a burden on the one who offers it, a heavy weight that can strain the boundary between right and wrong. Yet in the crucible of fear and violence, it is that very mercy that can break the cycle of bloodshed and offer a new path forward. To risk oneself for another is always a gamble, but to choose compassion in a land ravaged by cruelty can spark a quiet redemption that burns brighter than any sunlit horizon. Thank you for joining this journey across the dusty plains and through the moral trials of the American frontier. If this story stirred your imagination or your heart, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear about the truths you found here on the edge of mercy and betrayal. Safe travels, and
See you down the trail.